right, well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Nicolia South Burnett, and I am
Director, oh, this is so much easier. Look at that. Director of the Howard University Center for Digital Business. We're so happy to have you here at our Tech Titans Talk, powered by Maximus, kicking off the first day of Mechatech. So I believe all of you have had the opportunity to check in for today, and that's fantastic. We have lots of sessions going on tomorrow as well, and the more sessions you check into, the more opportunities you will have to be entered into our raffle for a Google Pixel tablet at our networking event tomorrow in the Oliver. So definitely make sure that you're checked in and that you're checking in at all of the sessions we have tomorrow as well. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our conversation for tonight. So before I turn it over to our moderator, I just want to quickly introduce our panel to you. I'm just so excited that they're here today. So first, I want to introduce on the very end, Mr. Derrick Pledger, who is the Chief Digital Information Officer at Maximus. Next, we have Mr. Sujey Edward, who is the Chief Technology Officer at IBM. We then have Ms. Joy Brown, who is the Chief Information Officer at Boston Medical Center. Next, we have Dr. Benjamin Harvey, who is CEO of AI Squared. And last but certainly not least, we have Ms. Ivy Bryant, VP of Enterprise Technology and Operations at Cigna. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. All right, and without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Benjamin.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Tech Titans. My name is Benjamin King. I am a freshman computer information systems major from Austin, Texas, and today I will be your moderator. I want to thank everybody on behalf of the Center of Digital Business for coming out here today. And tonight we have an incredible lineup of industry leaders, and these people are changing the future of technology. Our theme, Leading the Speed of Change, is balancing the now and the next in tech, and is more relevant than ever. As we continue to see advancements in AI, cybersecurity, and digital transformation, I know you are all excited to hear what they have to say. But before we dive in, I want to extend a special thank you to Maximus for sponsoring this event. Thank you very much. All right, we have a great discussion ahead of us, and I'd like to open the floor up to our panelists. And I'd like you to introduce yourself and give us one word that describes your leadership style.
Sujey, you start. My name is Sujey Edward, right? And so I have the greatest job in the world, by the way. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at IBM. One word to describe my management style is collaborative. And the reason why is if I got to come up with all the good ideas, why do I have all these people working for me, right? So at the end of the day, I want great ideas coming from lots of different people, whether it's the most junior person or the most senior person in the room.
I'll jump in next. So good evening again, Ivy Bryant. I work for the Cigna Group, and I'm sort of a tech adjacent, tech light. Up here on the panel tonight, I specifically sit within our operations and help to be a partner across new technology and new innovations within the Cigna Group. I would say my word is privileged. And one of my favorite quotes is, pressure is a privilege. It only comes to those who earn it. And I really feel like as a leader, you are given that privilege to lean in and inspire and develop people. It is a privilege. And it's definitely something that comes from pressure. So excited to talk to you guys about additional leadership tenets as we go through this evening together.
Joy Brown, Boston Medical Center Healthcare System. I'm the Chief Digital Information Officer there, and I have responsibility for technology across the system. We are a multi-hospital system with health plan benefit services as well as pharmacy services, and we are a growing system in that we're bringing in new business entities all the time. If I had to describe a particular, like in one word, which is difficult by the way, it would be curious. For me, curiosity is the foundation for innovation. It's the foundation for problem solving. It's the foundation for really identifying the talent that's within the organization, new ideas, new information, what's happening outside of the company from an external landscape. It really is the one thing that every day when I wake up and interact with my team, it's curiosity that drives all of us, and not just about what we can see and hear and what's in front of us, but what we don't know and what could be. And so that's the word I would choose.
Hello, everyone. My name is Benjamin Harvey. I'm the founder of AI Squared. I'm also a three-time HBCU graduate, so I know the I know the HBCU opportunity, but I also know the grind. And I know that you guys are putting in that work on a day-to-day basis, and it's not easy, so kudos to you all. I started my academic career off at Mississippi Valley State University, ended up at Bowie State University getting my doctorate, and then I went to the Boston area and I did a postgraduate research program for about 2 years at Harvard and MIT. There's a joint program for health and science technology. And then I ended up at the National Security Agency. I did 10 years there, and then I jumped over to a company called Databricks, and then I started AI Squared. Saw this really big problem and challenge when I was at Databricks. Like, all of these models are being built, but they're not actually becoming useful for businesses. So I was like, hey, maybe I could start a company that could really focus on solving that problem, but could be offered for both commercial enterprises as well as federal government organizations. So here I am. And the answer to the question is really, it's grit. It's all about, how bad do you really want it?
I like grit too. You stole that from me, but I'll come up with something else. First and foremost, I just wanted to thank you for being here, the students. There's a lot of other things that you could be doing right now, but you're here trying to get a couple nuggets from some very smart people. So I appreciate you being here. Again, Derrick Pledger, I'm the Chief Digital and Information Officer at Maximus. And if it was one word, I would say empowering. I spent some time in the Army, spent some time at the FBI, so early in my career, a lot of what I was accustomed to was taking orders and being dictated to. But when you lead smart people, you can't dictate to smart people, and the best bet is to create space and capacity for your smart people to go solve problems without you getting in the way. So I never want to be an impediment for my smart folks, and the mantra that I use is that we're at letter A, we need to get to letter D. I don't care what you do in B and C. You go figure that out. Just get me to D, unless you have some problems. So it's all about empowerment and trust and making sure that you create an environment where your folks are able to succeed, but also fail and drive into a mission outcome. So.
Thank you, panelists. So I heard some great words there. I heard curiosity. I heard, did we have more? No, we didn't. Okay. Yeah. Okay, collaborative. I heard some great words there. And now I'd like to move on to our next question. With so much rapid change in tech, what is the most exciting tech change for you guys now?
I think we should start out with Dr. Harvey there. He's the AI smart big brain Databricks guy. So let's start with him. Then I'll circle that one, and then I'll pass it to Sujey.
All right. So okay. Over the past, maybe 6 months, right? We've seen this evolution of AI happen across the ecosystem, where for the first time ever, the general population of people that are out there have had the opportunity to communicate with AI, right? Whether it's in a chat application or there are other applications that allow you to physically get on the phone with an AI agent and actually do a video with an AI agent. So now people for the first time have been actually able to speak and communicate with AI like never before. And what that has done is it's created an explosion of this AI technology across different customer segments and across the landscape, right? So as you think about what has been going on for the past 5 years, it's always been about using AI technologies and algorithms to do predictions, right? It's been about, how can I predict the next best outcome for my business, right? But with this new realm of technology, it's all about generative AI, right? And generative AI, you hear all about large language models, right? That's the new, algorithm that's out there that is, the underlying core for ChatGPT. It's a large language model, right? So now, right, when we think about the future, organizations are thinking about, okay, how do I go from predictive AI to this generative AI ecosystem? And now how do I get to something that we think of as agentic AI, right? And agentic AI is all about fully autonomous AI processes, right? Where there's no human in the loop. And for an example, you can, tell an agent to say, hey, I want you to fully automate my sales process. And what that now provides an organization with is the ability to remove currently existing, remove the currently existing workforce, right, for an example, so that they can now have this fully autonomous AI technology and ecosystem that can go from start to finish. So when we think about like what's next, it's all about organizations having this fully autonomous ecosystem where you don't have to have the human in the loop, and then you can more efficiently and effectively drive mission and business outcomes.
Yeah, I'll add on a couple, because he kind of excluded me because I said I was tech adjacent. But
Go ahead, Ivy.
so I come to this sort of in two hats. One, first as a mom, my daughter is 13. She has sickle cell anemia. So I think about all of the ways in which I'm excited about what we're seeing in stem cell and gene therapies, right? Thinking about the fact that it's sort of giving us a advantage around access to care and changing the landscape and making it easier. So those are the things I personally get excited about. Also as a sort of consumer of this, but also as a healthcare professional, what we've seen even since COVID around the revolutionary sort of virtual and digital solutions, right, that we're seeing in the marketplace. So from the Cigna Group's perspective, we have a platform called MD Live where you can go on and be able to connect instantaneously with a 5-star physician. So making it very much still human-centered, right? At the same time, I'm not spending an hour or two on the road. She's not missing school. We can get preventative service very much within the comfort of our own home. I'm avoiding $20 in parking fees, right? Going in the garage of a DC doctor's office. So those are the things that I think about. Also, in many spaces, we aren't there yet, right? So I still enjoy and get excited about what we are seeing with the blend of predictive analytics and AI from the perspective of making it easier for our internal stakeholders. So for me at Cigna, it might be our claims adjudicator and processor, or our call center advocate, where we're going to cut down on the time because they have new technology and tools to get to their answers faster. So less disruptive with customers. We can provide them with the answers. Just think about during COVID or big decisions like Roe versus Wade, where customers might be calling to get information and want to connect very quickly to what's going to change with my health care. Now that information is easily accessible. We have tools that will even transcribe calls so that if you have to make a second or third call, everything is there. We have smart technology that will triage you to the right person to answer your questions the first time. So there's a lot of things that are happening within operations even, but are also happening that I get excited about for everyday consumers like us of healthcare.
Joy, did you have something?
What excites me is I feel like, to Benjamin's point, access has now been opened up to the everyday person. And there was a time where technology as a field or as a solution was inaccessible, and that there were divisions depending on where you were from a socioeconomic perspective. I feel like all of this technology is coming together to now make it possible. If you have a desire, you can absolutely use it. Being in both financial services and healthcare, two industries where data is, the amount of data that exists and the possibilities once AI is applied has life-changing results for all of us. I mean, the way that we think about our healthcare solutions today, or even the financial services that are delivered to us, they can ultimately be seamless, without interaction, without wait, and the value that you're going to get instantaneously, that we haven't seen it yet, but I do think it's coming.
What excites me the most is actually you all. So all of us from a technology perspective, we grew up in a time where there was no technology, right? Like, so I remember the first flip phone, I remember the Sidekick, I remember pagers, I remember dial-up internet, I remember green screens, I remember all that. So everything that we know from a technology perspective, we learned along the way. You're the first generation that's growing up with technology right in your hip pocket, right? So I got a little one at home, like she knows how to do everything. My mother will call her on how to fix her computer and how to fix her phone and so forth. So what really excites me is we are learning and have a history of the way the old ways were done. You guys are coming into it with a fresh perspective saying, no, there's a better way to do this. Let's skip all these early steps and let's move ahead. So that's what really excites me from a technology perspective.
Speak for yourself, Sujey. I never had a flip phone. I just want to make that clear. So I have a quick question. How many students actually have used ChatGPT or another AI service to write a paper, get an idea for a paper, or to develop a slide deck? Good, good. I appreciate the candor. It's good stuff. Listen. No, listen. It's not a trick question. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I have a 10-year-old son, and just a couple of weeks ago, he had to do a 10-slide presentation, and I basically said, "Look, you're going to build this presentation. You need to present it to me, just like you're going to do for your class." So, went upstairs, came back down like 10 minutes later. He's like, "I'm done. I'm ready." I was like, "There's no way you can be ready." He's like, "Yeah, Copilot help me." I'm like, "Nah, that's not what we're doing right now." So anyway. For a while, AI was sort of this nebulous term where it was something that people just couldn't attach their hands to. It was something that was cool, like for tech bros and folks in Silicon Valley. So I think that point Joy made about access is really true because we now are applying AI in a way that is having real world ramifications for real people every single day. So Ivy talked about the healthcare side of things. There's a sort of a negative side to it too. I have a real life application of AI that displaced 500 people as it relates to their job. We had a situation where we were doing manual operations for documentation retrieval and doing transcription from one place to another. So you had a human that was basically looking at 50 documents and taking that information and putting it into one document so someone else can make a decision. So we replaced that with AI, and there were 500 people that no longer had a job. So it created a different problem set, which is how are we going to now upskill those people to go do something else? So I think we just need to be very careful about how we apply AI and not forget about folks who I would call AI natives, like you all. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we don't leave folks behind as we bring new technologies to bear.
Yeah, so on that point of not leaving folks behind when we make new technology, my next question is, how do you balance innovation and stability? How do you make sure that your innovations are moving at the same pace as your company?
As a leader, this is a challenge, and it's a challenge because, as indicated here, a lot of those that are in the tech field today have been in it for 20 years, 10 years, even 5 years. If you entered 5 years ago, the knowledge that you had that was new and relevant then is not new and relevant today. So the way that we approach that is continual learning. Going back to that access to information, using some of these new tools and technologies to stay current on what's happening external. It is nothing to open YouTube or open a podcast to understand what has changed in the past 24 hours. Security is one of those areas where it's changing every day, the threat actors positioning themselves in different ways. So we just continue to educate ourselves. Overall, though, the risk of using some of the new aspects and models related to AI or any other new technology, as a healthcare organization, we have to weigh what is the risk of that particular use case? Is there a chance that clinical care could be put at risk if the model delivers a result different from that of a physician or a practicing clinician? And so being able to have what I'll call controls.
That you gain the benefit, but you don't completely take away the oversight. You get efficiency, but you also have now amassed what is what could be thousands of results into a recommendation, as opposed to just relying on one person's thoughts and one person's understandings. So balancing risk with the benefit is how we've been doing that.
I heard up Joy's response, and I only just want to add a little bit more texture and color to it, especially in the health space. Be very conscious of the fact that sometimes innovation moves faster than the regulation. And, when we think about even the challenges around research days and the medical fields, a lot of the basis of information that AI gathers from is based on the data from Whitesdales, right? Their health outcomes, the way that, just, I don't know, a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago or more, we're just sort of seeing the difference between the symptoms in a heart attack between male versus female. So sort of that big disease states could be very different. So that being very careful about the information and still have that intervention piece, again, that human-centered piece of it that helps us make the right decisions. I think that
Yeah, I would say what I look for around your current profits versus future profits, I look at patterns. So the big thing is if you build something and solve a problem for one person, that's a cool thing. Like, cool, like I'm glad, your toast is back. But if you can solve a problem that lots of people have, or multiple businesses have, or lots of companies have, that's where you want to invest your time. That's when where you want to invest your energy, because that gives you a bigger customer base that you can go after, and that means that's a lot of innovation on there. So if you think about, say, some of the biggest companies in the world, right? The biggest hotel company in the world doesn't own any properties. It's Airbnb. The biggest taxi cab company in the world doesn't own any cars. That's Uber. The biggest media company in the world doesn't produce any of their own content, and that's Facebook, right? So they looked at a problem. They looked at a way to be able to get lots of people involved, and that's how they created those multi-billion dollar business. So it's about covering, being able to come up with an effective solution for many people.
But then did you ask?
Yeah, so when you think about innovation, one of the things that on the academic side or researchers are trying to push for right now is really so there's a guy Jet Dean who walked on the core behind the Google infrastructure, and there's and it was at Google DeepMind, and then there's another guy that David Patterson is at UC Berkeley, Torrey Award Ware. And they wrote this paper that essentially suggested that when we think about how we want to apply innovation, specifically on the AI side, so different fields, the fields that we want to look for are the fields that are elastic in a sense, right? So there's a difference between elastic fields and inelastic, right? So if we apply AI to an elastic field, let's say, for example, something like agriculture, and we start to add AI or robotics into agriculture, what do you think happens to farmers, right? Farmers end up without jobs, in a sense. But on another end of the spectrum, like I worked at the National Securities, and one of the blessings of AI to analysts is that it can help augment their cognitive decision-making process, right? So it's actually utilizes a compiler where that field is more elastic in a sense, right? So when we add AI into kind of the analyst ecosystem, it really helps them and supports them some more efficient and analytical decisions, but it doesn't necessarily leave them atop the job, right? So as we think about innovation and where we want to innovate, the research is trying to trend towards let's push our innovation horizontally last there. And let's still think about innovating in any elastic fields, but let's make sure that we don't remove jobs in some of those areas.
All the points. So I'll round that out with I think a close cousin of innovation is resourcefulness. At most companies, large or small, there's always limited resources. You have constraints on, you have to pick and choose what you're going to invest in to solve a particular business problem. So at Maximus, there's 1,000 problems that we could try to solve. We kind of do a reverse process where We think about what is going to be the most material or kept to our business.
And then we will focus our big brains on solving that particular problem, and given, as I talked about before, space and capacity to do that hard work and to innovate, and without the worry of failing, and you have to kind of go to the principal's office or go to the corner. We want folks to fail, but we want you to fail forward in a way that you're trying to solve something that's going to have impact to the business. So I think innovation is phenomenal, but you do need to have a certain semblance of focus when you innovate. So on the other side of that innovation, you can put your failures in that toolbox. You don't make that same mistake later, but also then you can provide opportunity to have that breakthrough, which can change the trajectory of your business. So being resourceful about that and making sure that you can innovate even within the context of constraints, I think is pretty important.
Yeah, so as far as talking about innovations and when you're talking about like partnerships with other companies, how do you decide which partnerships for like artificial intelligence or cybersecurity, how do you decide which partnerships are good for you and are going to be good for your company versus ones that are kind of just hype and they don't really have substance behind them?
I'll start with that one, and then the startup guy, he probably has a different perspective, and he can talk about that more than I can. But for me, I think that starts with mission. And we were talking about earlier before we came down here. There's a lot of companies that their main mission it's about maximizing profit, and those partnerships are extremely transactional, where they're not thinking about better health outcomes for citizens or taking care of veterans, making sure veterans can get care after they come home from war and things like that. What they're worried about is making a buck. So for me, when I build a partnership ecosystem, I don't want it to be transactional. I would rather it be transformational. How can we work together to do something better for human beings, for citizens on a global scale? So in that way, there's always a balance that you have to strike, because you may have some folks that want to be transactional, and you really could use their technology to scale to solve an additional problem. But I think you need to be very careful about getting in bed with folks that potentially may not share your values and things like that, and that's something that's very important at Maximus.
Yeah. So AI squared, right? So when I was at Databricks, right, which is it's like an AI and data company, and that's before I started AI squared. And I had this idea, and I was like, okay, maybe I can build a company out of it. And there's a lot of fear that was associated with like stepping out. You have a comfortable job, and I was 10 years in the federal government. I stepped out of the federal government and jumped into this kind of commercial job where there was a ton of uncertainty, and I'd lost my cushion with regards to having the comfortability, right, of a federal government job, right? So in that transition, what you start to see is that you got to come out of your comfort zone. You got to take risks, and from an entrepreneurial perspective, right? Being someone who has a tolerance for risk is something that you really need from a startup perspective, right? If you want to create a startup and you don't really have a stomach for risk, you won't have what it takes to take your last $500,000 out of your retirement and start your company, right? But in the end, right, you take $500,000 out of your retirement, and then over a 2-3 year period, the valuation of your company is over $150 million. So you end up it's kind of the risk reward kind of complex, right? So you end up making up for the risk with the kind of long-term understanding of what the reward might actually be, right? But kind of throughout this process, what you start to understand is the importance of not only just being able to take risks, but also the importance of understanding the balance between like revenue is super important, right? So as soon as I started a company and we did our first round of funding, right? We did a $6 million round of funding at a $30 million valuation, right? We had to get a handful of investors that were willing to, buy into a vision of someone who was coming from an HBCU, didn't have any experience, that bought into the vision that I could build a world-class enterprise product that could become $1 billion company, right? And in that, you understand that there's certain expectations for what you have to do to be able to meet those milestones that can help you get to the next level, right? So with that understanding, from a perspective of the question, what you're looking for from a partnership perspective is you're trying to align to partners that can help you hit your milestones, right? And think about this, right? When I started AI Squared, and I got $6 million in the bank, and I remember that day when I was on the phone with the lawyer, and they were like, "Look at your bank account," right? And I seen $6 million, and I was screaming. I was like, "Ah!" Right? But there was so much pressure that came with that, right? But the point is that as soon as you get the resources, the investors are like, the first board meeting, they're like, "Okay, you've got 12 months to make $2 million of revenue." And I've never sold a product like that in my entire life, and you got 12 months. If you don't get the revenue in 12 months, guess what happens to your company? Your company dies, right? That's just the reality of what happens. So when you're thinking about partnerships, you're thinking about who are those organizations that I can align to that are going to help me, whether it's joint go-to-market, right, whether it's kind of joint sales, right, or whether it's an OEM model where you're putting your core technology inside of their product or whatever it is, you're trying to make sure that you can align to the best of your ability so that you can get the revenue that you need to keep your investors at bay, right? So AI Squared went from $6 million of funding to a $30 million valuation. We had to do $2 million in 12 months, and we did a little bit over that. And then the next year, you've got to 3x that, right? So you've got to go from 1 to 2 million to 3 million to 9 million to 27 million. So you've got to continue to 3x that year over year. So when you think about partnerships, the model that you're trying to attract is someone that's going to help you hit your goals. But there's also the other end of the spectrum, which is, okay, now that I have a partner that's helping me hit my milestones, is that partner also someone that I could entice to maybe acquire the company at a later stage as well? So it's not just revenue, right? But you're also looking at, okay, at some point, if my valuation is $100+ million, and as the CEO, I own a good chunk of that, right? Maybe I don't want to ride this wave for 10 years. Maybe I want to cash out, take the blueprint, pass it to my fellow individuals here at Howard, show them how to create a startup, and then maybe I can start my next company as well, right? So it's kind of two aspects, revenue, but also from the acquisition angle. That's how you look for partners.
If I could add maybe a different side of that, every morning when I wake up and open my email, there are at least 20 emails from startup companies who want to be partners. And one of the ways in which we identify who would the best partners for us be, one of those was just mentioned, which was, do they align with our mission and what we're trying to do for patients and those that are in the healthcare system? Do they want to get an understanding of what our problem is, or do they just want to sell us their solution? Because there's a lot of solution selling before you understand the problem we need to address together. So all of those are really important in narrowing down, are we even going to be able to work together? Then once you get past that aspect, it's really a matter of, we're not going to build what we're not expert at. So we're in a service business, so we deliver care. If there is a business, startup, or established that is the best at a particular technology, whether that's in data, infrastructure, telecom, networking, that's who we want to begin talking with. Where we want to end up is, can they do that for us in the healthcare industry? And if this is the first time, to the point that was just made, and this is their first attempt, what's the trade-off? Will we get additional flexibility because they're trying to establish themselves and grow? So it's really like, I think about a lot of things this way. It's a value exchange. And if we can exchange value in a way that helps the company that wants to partner with us and sell us their software or service, and we can add value to them, then it's something that we pursue.
Got you, yeah. I think that's a really good point, focusing on the problem and not the solution, which is something that a lot of people fall into. And so now I'm going to lead into my next question. And if you had one lesson about leadership that you'd like to share to the people here, what would that be? And how did you learn it? Like, what did you go into?
I can jump in first. So, from a leadership perspective, leadership, everybody will come up with their own style, right? So don't be true to your style of leadership, and that'll be fine. But the one thing I have learned about business is my dad he had a 10th grade education. When he was alive, he ran a lot of different businesses. He was an entrepreneur. So he had a gas station, he had a farm, he had a solar thing, he had a chicken restaurant, he had real estate, sold movies. He did it all, right? And every business that he was a part of, he was always successful. And I never understood how was he successful at all these different businesses. And he said to me, listen, because the math is the math. And I didn't understand it for a long time. And he basically showed me, look, the accounting on the books tells you what your inputs are and what you're going out. And he knew as a businessman, he could give a better service than anybody else. But the math is the math, right? And so for a long time as a technologist and, rising up in the ranks to VP to now Chief Technology Officer, for the longest time, I thought I was the center of the business. I ain't the center of the business. That CFO that's running the books, that's the person that's the center of the business. So if you really do understand what the CFO and what that money and that math that's coming in and what's going out, you'll really understand how you can impact that business. And then that will affect who you hire, who you bring in, and who's a part of your team. So I know we're all here in technology, but we are in the School of Business, right? Pick up those math classes, make sure you understand how those balance sheets work.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
So I would say I love these type of questions, and I have so many nuggets that I've learned over the years. I will probably just harp on some of the words that were used earlier when we introduced ourselves, leaning into those leadership tenets that are so important. I think Joy used the word curious. There's a book called The Ideal Team Player, and the concept in that book really focuses on staying hungry, humble, and smart. The grit, every word that I really feel like it's sort of pulling everything together. Staying curious is so important, even as a leader. You need to be a good listener. You need to want to learn more, be sort of that nimble learner, feel comfortable in very uncomfortable spaces and very ambiguous spaces. So I think definitely just keeping it short and sweet, stay hungry, humble, and smart would be mine.
Go ahead, Joe.
Can people see themselves taking the hill for you? And what I mean by that is, if you are a leader, day in and day out, are you building people up in a way that when that hill approaches the team, their ultimate first thought is, as a team, we need to be successful. And if we are going to find ourselves in a situation where we're not, how do we protect each other? And I think a lot of that comes from what the leader is exhibiting day in and day out. So you really have to care about the people as human beings that you're leading just as much as you care about the work that they're putting out.
Gotcha. Do you guys have any add-ons, or would you like?
Yeah, my fellow panelists touched on a lot of the good points, but I think leadership is inherently about failure, because some of the best leaders are also the best at failure. And as kids, we learn that, failure is bad. Like if you get a D on a test, you're in big trouble. Get A's, get B's. And culturally, that's sort of, it's incredibly destabilizing to all of us mentally, because we run away from failure as opposed to running toward it. And we should be running toward failure, because that's how you get better. That's how you put those mistakes in a toolbox so you know what to do differently going every single day. So myself, the way I lead my team is fail every single day. Fail fast, I will support you in your failure, so as long as you're not being reckless and, you know, putting the company at risk. But I think being able to bet on yourself, you know, talk about what Ben is doing, which is amazing. Like, it takes a lot of courage to have a startup, you know, take your own money, knock on the doors of investors and be successful at that. It takes a lot of courage to do things like that. But that's because he's okay with the failure that comes with it. And I'm rooting for you. You know, if you sell for $1 billion, I'll work for you. I'll work for you too, man. But at the end of the day, to all the students, man, just, it's okay to fail, right? Embrace failure, because those of you that do, the byproduct of that is you will be a lot more successful for folks that run away from it. So run toward it.
All right. Thank you so much, panelists. This has been an amazing discussion. Thank you, Tech Titans, for coming out. And I'd like to open up the floor for any questions that you guys have for our panelists.
Start picking on people, Ben, if someone doesn't fess up. There's one.
Hi, my name is Stephen Williamson. I'm a senior honors finance major fashion minor from Melbourne, Australia. And my question is, so there was a report that came out today in the Wall Street Journal. I was reading it this morning around the average, they did a year-long study on the average intelligence, and they found that across all age groups, the average intelligence was decreasing due to like dependence on AI and shorter attention spans. But then on the other side, I think there is also, you guys talked about a lot about like the use of the co-pilot and how it really is a tool, especially when it comes to generative AI. So I would just love to hear the panel's thoughts on kind of, do you feel like when you're looking across your organizations, or do you feel like your employees are using AI in a way that is beneficial and helpful? Do you feel like you've grown smarter with using AI technologies, or do you feel like maybe there's a detrimental aspect? Thank you.
Great question.
Yeah, that's a really good. I'll start. There are some dummies out there. I'll just let you know. Like any room you go into, you'll be shocked at how they got into that room. So to your point, I do think there's some of that. But when you take big averages and you take the entire population, there's a whole bunch of things that come into effect. The key is, I think, you know, twofold on this. One is making sure you surround yourselves in a room where you're not the smartest person in the room, that you're in there constantly learning. And when you find yourself as the smartest person in the room, it's time to find a new room to go to. I think from an AI perspective, the people that are using it, at least in my organization, are using it even better and using it to make themselves more efficient and then tackle problems we didn't know we could tackle, right? And so some of the crazy things that we've done with AI, I'll give you a quick example. We do some different things with the Department of Defense. And so when you have soldiers out on the battlefield, they have this thing called the HoloLens. And the HoloLens has different types of feeds that come in there, and it shows them different types of information. And so you have autonomous drones that are out there flying and then bringing that information and sending it back to these soldiers without the internet. There is no internet, there is no satellite communication. They're doing it through radios. I didn't think we could ever do that. Like, you know, candidly, I'm a CTO and I'm supposed to know that we can do that, and I didn't know we could do that. So I think, you know, always put yourself in a room where you're constantly learning. And then the second part of it is, at least in my organization, I find that people are leveraging AI in ways that I didn't know was possible.
Ben, did you want to?
Yeah, real quick. I think, so when you think about, like your point was intelligence, right? And you think about like how intelligence is currently measured. And you also think about, on the flip side, you think about organizations that are trying to get the full value out of artificial intelligence, right? They're not using the AI for like the minuscule tasks, right? That, you know, for an example, right? They're not using AI to specifically, you know, answer math problems and math equations, right? Like when you think about the value of the AI inside of an organization, it is really the ability for someone like yourself to have the soft skills that would empower you to communicate with the AI technology in a way that it can provide value. Right now, a good example of that is, so let's say you're in an organization and you on day one, you get this job and they're asking you to like help develop a product, right, for a particular problem that they are seeing inside of an organization, right? And the first thing that you have to do is you have to figure out and understand like what the problem is, and then you have to start talking to different people inside of the organization, right? So you may do, I like to call them customer discoveries. You may start talking to people and you may start trying to figure out what the actual problem is, and then you might start doing research as to what currently existing solutions are out there, and then what might be the best alignment to help solve that particular problem. But it's a soft skill of communication that's really necessary for you to be able to, really engage with someone, to ask them about their user experience, to understand where the actual problems are, the gaps are, where they can actually become more efficient and effective, and how they're actually in their workflow, right? Those are the actual skills that aren't measured when you think about from an intelligence perspective that are super important when it comes to, building AI technologies and putting them inside of organizations in a way where you can actually become more effective and efficient and productive inside of some of these technologies that you're trying to, put out at scale inside of an organization. So the point is like, when you think about the importance of the soft skills that are necessary as we think about how to deploy and kind of scale AI, that's more important than just like pure intelligence. It's understanding how to communicate, and that's something that we need to start putting into, factoring in as well.
So just to button this one up, phenomenal question. I do think that there's a certain level of personal responsibility and accountability when you think about the application of AI tools. So if, as an individual, you're using AI to take shortcuts, to do things that are more efficient, but you don't balance that and that you do that to the detriment of developing yourself, right? Learning, then of course, your peer or someone that you may be competing with perhaps may be smarter than you. But I think the way we measure intelligence, I'm not sure about the full context of that article that you referenced, but I think because AI is here, quantum is here, the way that we measure intelligence will be different going forward, right? It's not going to be, can you read this article, read this book, and then take a multiple choice test, you get an A, and then you're intelligent. Intelligence may be, because we are interacting with AI, because we are interacting with agentic AI, how do you best prompt the AI to come up with the outcome that you need for your particular company? And the person who's the smartest at that could perhaps be more intelligent, even though by previous means they may not be viewed as being smart. So I think we're in a different world, and I think the way we measure intelligence may have to evolve.
I think we have time for one or two more questions from the audience.
Hello. So I have a question about the regulation of AI and kind of how it's kind of hard to find that line, as it's going back to what you said about how innovation can get ahead of regulation. So I know sometimes with, I think it was some music award where they said they weren't going to consider music that was made by or generated by AI. That was kind of the way of regulating it. So I wanted to know you guys' opinions on how difficult it is to find that line for regulating AI, even though, again, that innovation can get ahead of the regulation.
Another great question. Joe, you want to touch that?
Real quickly, before our panelists answer, could I get your Howard intro?
I apologize. I'm Paris Adnan. I'm a freshman computer information systems major with a concentration in cybersecurity from PG County, Maryland.
Cool. Yeah, so, man, that's such a great question. So, most companies, when they think about, is AI something that I want to use? The first thing that they try to understand is, am I using the AI to make a decision, to support in making a decision, or am I using the AI to make a fully autonomous decision, so a decision by itself, right? So is the AI in support of someone as an executive leader that's going to make a decision, or is it a fully autonomous thing that's going to happen all by itself, right? And the challenge is for most organizations, right? It's because AI has to be regulated. If there's an AI system that's fully autonomous, like who do you point to when something goes wrong, right? Like who do you point to? You point to, we call it a non-person entity. Like, do you point to the NPE to say, if you had to go in front of the lawyers, do you point to the NPE, the non-person entity, and say, well, I'm not really sure what happened. It made a decision, and we can't really understand. Because remember, AI is a black box, right? Like it's a model, but you don't really understand like how the black box actually made the decision. So a lot of organizations, and this happened when I was at the National Security Agency, they shied away from putting in place fully autonomous AI capabilities, right? Because they just didn't have the attribution. If something were to go wrong, they couldn't attribute it back to a specific individual that they could take to court and point a finger at. So most organizations are like human in a loop. So how do we, create an ecosystem where before a decision is actually made, right? There's physically someone there that takes the insights from the algorithm, and they have to compile those insights, and then they make that final decision, right? So when you think about the regulation, there's all these kind of best practices that you can push out there, right? But the challenge is that when you think about regulation is like policy happens first, right? So someone creates the policy, and then what you're trying to do is you're trying to build the guardrails for the AI technology so that it can be in compliance with those policies, right? So the way that most organizations try to get out of that, building those very tight guardrails and pushing out best practices, they try to make sure that there's always a human, no matter where the insights from the AI where they're happening and how they come into play, there's always some person that before a decision is made, that person is going to be that individual that ultimately makes the decision so the attribution can be directly pointed back at that person if something bad was to happen. Great question.
Yeah, good question.
Last question. Oh, here we go.
Hello, my name is Paris Hamilton. I'm a senior honors finance major from St. Louis, Missouri. And my question is for specifically the people in the healthcare industry. How will the healthcare industry help tackle the problem of the high consumer cost for your guys' services?
That's a really good question. It's interesting because we're at a place where the build cost of services is not necessarily covering what those delivering the services are charging the system. We have a dilemma in this country, quite frankly. I do think that is one of the more exciting aspects of technology, is it could create efficiencies that bring down the overall end-to-end cost of care delivery, allowing us to focus on aspects that truly impact the outcomes, not things that are administrative in nature, not things that that can be what I'll call simple enough to automate, and it's just a repetitive step in the care delivery process. I don't know that we have a solution to it, and I actually think it's why there is so much turmoil over it today, and it's why you see a lot of health systems merging, acquiring, expanding, because they're trying to get to economies of scale. And there's a lot of discussion both on the federal, state, and then in the private sector around how do we solve this problem. But I do think technology is one of the big solves that will help us get to some scale. But I don't think it's going to solve all of it.
I don't have anything to add. I think that's spot on, and I'd like that you hit on sort of it's across the full continuum of the ecosystems, and we have to remember there is a regulator part of it. So I don't think there's much to add on that one. definitely a big complex question that we're asking ourselves.
Thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause for our Tech Titans?